Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to another Acoustic Guitar Talk live stream. I am Simon Candy, for those of you who don't know me. Let's see who is here. Say hi in the chat if you are here right now and where you are coming in from. I see we have Lars from Sweden. Great to see you, Lars Eric. I still don't know if I'm really saying that correctly, but I apologize if I'm not. So we are here for another talk on a very, very important topic. Whatever you play, whatever instrument, whatever you do musically, arguably the most important thing of all, certainly for me up in the top sort of 2 or 3, and that is rhythm and ways to improve our rhythm with our guitar playing. It's often something that's kind of a second thought when you are learning to play an instrument, and it's also a very, very common area where people do struggle. We have Sjoerd from the Netherlands, and I am now saying that correctly. I've confirmed with Sjoerd. Took me a few goes, but Sjoerd has been on some of my live classes as a student of mine. So great to see you, Sjoerd. And Rob from, I'm trying to make sense of the flag there. Sjoerd is from the Netherlands. I'm not sure if I said that. I can't quite make out that flag. I should know. It's the Olympics, isn't it? However, great to see you guys here. South of England, Lee. Great to have you, Lee, all the way from the UK. So as I said, we are here to talk and work on ways to improve our rhythm as guitarists and as musicians. Got George from Greece, Anders from, I know Anders is from Sweden. Great to see you, Anders. There he just added that. But I know Anders very well as well, and a student of mine. So I can think of no one better than a very good friend of mine from the US who's going to come in and help us with this today, and that is Brian Fish. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, Simon. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Fantastic.
Now, I always forget, exactly where are you in the US?
I'm in Ohio.
Ohio, so. That's right. Yes. And Brian was just telling me he had a pretty decent storm blow through last night, has been without power, currently without Wi-Fi, I think it is. So we are hoping that the connection is good for the next hour at least. But yeah, it's got to suck if you have no power at all. So hopefully it's good across the board for you, Brian. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. It's great to have you here, Brian. And so we're going to talk, or you're going to sort of lead us off here with the first of what I believe will be 7 ways that we can improve our rhythm with our guitar playing. So I'm sure, I mean, you teach tons of people, you've taught for decades, right?
Yeah, decades, yes.
Yeah, much like myself. I think we're a similar vintage. So all the way back to the 90s, right? And
94 to be exact, yes.
yeah, I was 94 too. There you
Okay.
go. I was actually May 4, 94. I only remember because it was my 19th birthday. So yeah, we are almost to the day then. So and for me, teaching all that time, rhythm tends to be one of those things that's a stickler for a lot of people. It's that common sort of thing where they struggle. They may be aware that it's the rhythm that's, halting them from doing what they want to do. Other times, maybe not. But do you find that same sort of thing with your students over the years, that rhythm tends to be a reasonable obstacle to get over?
That is one of the main things. Yes, it's what
Mhm.
almost everyone struggles with.
Yep.
And one of the main reasons is people just don't set aside time to concentrate on just rhythm.
Yes.
Everyone wants to play songs, they want to play their scales, they want to play solos, and they get the notes
Mhm.
down, but they don't really concentrate on the space between the notes. And
Yes.
just you need to set aside time within your practice schedule
Yes.
to just focus on rhythm. And
Yes. Yeah.
unfortunately, for a lot of people, I think they worry that it's going to be boring. And
Hmm.
in the beginning, it can be a little bit boring. But the thing is, if you get through that and you do the work, all of a sudden, everything you do sounds so much better. And
Yes.
more people actually want to play with you, and you become an demanding musician. And
Yes.
it's everything becomes more fun if you're willing to put in that work up front.
Yes.
I find way too many people don't put that in their practice schedule and just put it off for as long as possible.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. I always say this too. It's one of those skills, and there's a few skills like this with your playing, that once it improves, everything you've ever done to that point in time is better. Everything you're doing will improve, and everything you do down the track will be better. It's just it's transferable to all areas of your playing rhythm. So yeah, it's you get so much return for your investment if you are willing to put some time into your rhythm, each practice session basically.
Yeah, I mean everything. A lot of my practice actually starts from rhythm and then builds out from there. So
So your personal practice you're talking about, or in the way you
yes,
get to
yeah,
shoot?
and the way I teach
Oh,
people to practice too is
yep.
if you start from rhythm and thinking with rhythm, there's so much you can do with that. Because I
Mm,
mean, once you start getting good at rhythm, you're going to find that you're using the same rhythms a lot. I mean,
yeah.
especially in pop music, there's only a few rhythms get used all the time,
Hmm.
but it's being able to do multiple things within those rhythms. And you can really, if you think that way, you can really build a decent even chord vocabulary, everything else off of a rhythm if you just have that as your base and you're building off of that. So
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite approaches for practicing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm looking forward to this too, because I mean, I work on rhythm and have done over the years and get my students too, but there's always new ways to go about it. And um, let's get straight into it. So I believe we've got maybe 7 things to work through here, and we'll just sort of see how we go. I forgot to say at the start for everybody here, if you've got questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them as we progress throughout the stream. So any questions that you've got up front, or any questions that come to mind as we go today, let us know in the chat and we'll see if we can address those. So Brian, let's go with the first approach to improving one's rhythm.
Okay. Well, on my list, I kind of gave away the first one in the intro there. So that is just isolate it in your practice. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
move right on to number 2, and that is be able to count everything before you play it. The key to rhythm is being able to verbalize it. And for me, especially at slower paces, I like to also be able to clap out the rhythm. I like to think like a drummer a little bit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you need to go get a drum set and start practicing like a drummer. It's just as simple as kind of go 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and keep that nice and steady. If you can do that, it's way easier to transfer that over to your guitar because you feel the pace of those notes. Because so
Yes.
many people just want to hear, can you please play that rhythm for me? Or let me listen to the recording again. And they're just trying to keep whatever in their head and imitate it. And so you need to create rhythm yourself.
Yes.
It's not something you're reacting to, you're creating rhythm. And ideally, especially if you're playing with others, you're all feeling that exact same rhythm, that exact same pulse at the same time. That's how things sound good and tight.
Yes. So counting along, will help your awareness of the beat, right? Where the 1 is, the 2, the 3, the 4.
Yes, any subdivision. Yes.
Yeah. And would you agree that 1 is the most important beat to feel? Because once you know where 1 is, all the other beats slot into place.
Especially when you're starting, yes. Because
Yeah.
when you first start playing with other people, you can do something as simple as play a whole note
Mm-hmm.
and just make the chord changes, and it fits in. It sounds good.
Yes.
But if you're playing on the E of 1 and everyone else is playing on 1, all of a sudden everything around you sounds really bad because that person's just slightly off.
Yes.
So if you can feel 1, you can fit in with other people and play. If you have no idea where 1's at, you're going to be a really hard person to play along with.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And so I often found, like, when I teach people to count, or I get people to count in classes and tap in and so forth, one, they seem very reluctant to count. And sometimes I think it's just they feel a little embarrassed, perhaps, because they, it might seem kind of such a basic sort of skill. And I put it down a little bit to just maybe in the moment they're feeling a bit embarrassed. And I hope that, when they're on their own, they're counting, because it seems quite easy, but it can be reasonably challenging depending on the rhythm to count and clap rhythms, right?
Oh yeah, no. When I first started, I struggled. I mean, and I like to add in the tap the foot. Can you tap the foot to the beat? And when I
Yes.
first had to do that, I had to go so slow and stare at my foot
Mm.
because my foot wanted to do the exact beat that was being played
Yes.
and not just hit on the downbeats. And it
Mm-hmm.
took a while to train my foot to just hit on the downbeats. But I mean, honestly, I wish I had tapes of how bad I was when I first started. Because if people could see that, they would see that if I could do it, anyone can do it. It's just you
Yeah.
have to be willing to put in the time to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to feel that beat, and then you want to start feeling those subdivisions over the top of it. And just the
Mm-hmm.
more you work with this, the easier it gets. And it just everyone always wants to play by feel, but that only happens once you put in the work.
Yeah, yeah, you got to get all the mechanics. Then you
Yeah,
can kind of relax and play around with it as such. If you want to push the beat or hold back a bit, that's a big difference between doing that and just having no idea and playing out of time. So, for sure, you want to sort of get that strong sense of the beat and the divisions of the beat to then be able to create with it.
yes.
And yeah, tapping the foot, that's a great one. That's very common to tap whatever you're clapping, but we want to get that foot to be the constant just timekeeper, right? Like the metronome, just tapping on the beat as you're tapping out whatever particular rhythm you might be doing.
Yes, and especially if I'm playing with others and I look around at people's feet, I want to see everyone's foot hitting the ground at the same time.
Yeah,
If
yes,
someone's foot's not, where I know we're in trouble.
yeah,
So, I
exactly.
mean,
It's so important. And I found, I'm not sure with your experience, and this might be just me, I'm not too sure, but I've found over the years playing with some singers, it can be particularly challenging because, I mean, this could be anyone. I might be a bit unfair singling out singers here, but
no.
playing, like I did some gigs years ago with a great singer. She was brilliant, and it was just acoustic guitar and she was singing, so it was very stripped back. And I found what she was doing was relying on cues from the song that she'd practiced to keep her time. But of course, when you just got the acoustic guitar, you don't have all the other instruments that you might be using as a cue to keep your time. So I am always, it doesn't matter if it's a single guitar or a full orchestra, there's a pulse that everyone is following, feeling to keep their part in time. If you rely, it's fine to use things as a reference to kind of help solidify your time and your part, or as cues. But if you solely rely on that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because you're not at the foundational level of just the pulse to keep the time.
Yeah, especially if you're like a stripped down arrangement like you were just talking about, all
Yeah.
those cues are gone. So
Yes.
now it's up to you to know that, oh, the vocal line starts on the and of 2.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
So,
Not while the bass does something or the drums are doing some little fill to bring you in. It's just the end of 2, whether there's a whole band or a guitar or nothing. I mean, if the vocal's got to come in before the guitar does, well then, you've got to set the tempo, of course, but then, yeah, you've got to feel the downs and the ups to know where to come in, right?
absolutely, yes. And if
Yeah,
it's just a duo like that, I mean, unfortunately, as guitar players, the singer wins and we have to
exactly.
adjust
Yeah,
and figure out where
exactly.
they're at.
I always say that it's like the singer's always right. It doesn't matter whether there's a double chorus where there shouldn't be, or it comes in early. You've just got to go with it because the only worst situation from that or outcome from that is if you just keep going down your path and you stay out of time with the singer. So yeah, you definitely want to follow the vocalist in those sorts of situations.
Yeah, I mean, as a musician, and in this case, it sounds like you just have a better sense of time and know more about music. And as a
Yes.
musician, to me, it's my job is always to make those around me that I'm playing with sound better.
Yeah.
That's always job number one.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I
Exactly.
mean, if I get to show off doing that, that's great. But if my showing off takes away from the overall performance, then
Mm.
I'm doing something wrong. So the
Yeah.
job is always, and everyone cares about the singer.
Yes.
I mean, I
Exactly.
care about the guitar player because I'm a guitar player. That's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
Yes.
But I'm not the general audience. And for the general audience, the singer is usually the thing that they really care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Front and center. That's where most people's direction or focus or attention is. There's some guitar players out in the audience who might be on the guitar, but yeah, generally it's the singer. So absolutely. What about okay? So we sort of said at the start of the stream, making it part of your practice routine, which is very important, and a lot of people don't because they're either not aware of it as much or they it's boring or whatever it might be. So that's things to counter that. So count before you play it, be able to counter. What about number 3, Brian? What's another approach we can take when wanting to improve our rhythm?
well, we said make it part of your practice routine, but you don't
Mhm.
even need to do that because the rhythm is something you can practice anywhere.
Yes.
So if you're taking like public transportation on the way to work, sit there and work on your rhythm while you're sitting on the bus or on the train. Okay. Don't recommend doing this if you're driving. So, but
Yes.
once you get to the office, if you can get away with it, practice your rhythm a little bit while you're in front of your computer doing
Yes.
your work. You can practice rhythm anywhere.
Yeah.
Probably have to be a little bit subtle if you're doing it in an office because you don't want to be clapping really loud and
Yeah.
distracting everybody else. But you can absolutely be counting and clapping and do something as simple as this. I'm just barely touching my finger to my thumb, but I'm feeling a pulse in doing that. And I'm not disrupting everyone else around me. So there's all kinds of little things that you can do throughout your day where you're thinking rhythm. Even when you're listening to music, listen on a deeper level. Try to pick one instrument and what rhythm are they playing? Can I pick out what the guitar's doing? Can I pick out what the kick drum's playing? Can I pick out what the bass is doing? Like we just talked about, is the singer starting on the and of 2 or are they starting on the downbeat? All these fun little games you can play with rhythm. And the more you start thinking that way, just rhythm becomes a part of your natural thought process.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yes, I always recommend working with rhythm as much as you can away from the guitar because you can. And yeah, you don't have to, you can, as you say, you can be working on it and someone could be kind of looking at you and not realize you're doing that because yeah, as you said, you could just be just the fingers
They're just
or
little
just
tiny.
yeah,
There's still a pulse there. It don't have
that's
to be
it.
the big flap where the whole office knows
Yeah,
what you're doing.
exactly. Or you could just have your hand on your lap or whatever, and just a finger just lightly touching, and it can be done very subtly, so you don't have to worry about looking odd in public, clapping away to a metronome as such. But yeah, that's a really good point too. Listening to music, which we can do pretty much anywhere, anytime, more or less, um, and listening for the rhythm. So maybe also, I think the individual rhythms are great, and also just collectively, what kind of rhythm could you clap along to the song? Because I find people when they're learning to strum have trouble because they're trying to hear a very sort of specific rhythm, perhaps the guitar strumming, but it's sometimes hard to hear and it's not really that necessary. I always sort of say focus on the drums more. What's the drums sort of
Yes.
dictating for your hand to do? Because that's really what's going to help guide your strumming, not trying to hear what the guitar's doing. That's kind of, you got to go that layer deeper to where it's kind of the foundation of it. So, there's lots of different rhythms you could strum to a song in time and be in the groove. Lots of little nuances. So I find, yeah, if you can just hear a song and tap out some rhythms that might not be specific to an instrument, but still fits in the flow of the song, that's a really great thing to do too.
Yeah, no, you want to. Most things I play, I call in the style of. Okay,
Hmm.
the
Yep.
song has either like a quarter note, eighth note bass to it, and honestly, anything with a combination of those notes, you can make sound good in most
Yeah.
situations. Or is
Yes.
it a 16th note bass of the song? There's
Yes.
so much we can play off of that and still have everyone in the room believe that we're playing exactly like the recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a guitar player, we're given so much space, and everyone worries about what is the exact strum that this person's playing.
Yeah.
And especially if you're reading like tablature, sometimes the guy's honestly improvising his part as he's playing and playing variations on the 16th note.
Yep.
And I also see so many people get hung up on why is measure 2 different than measure 1.
Yes.
Well, which one do you like better? Or do you
Mm.
want to play option 3, which is something you wrote that you think fits really good?
Yeah.
And it's okay to be, I mean, rhythm's a very creative thing. You can do a lot with rhythm to spice up a song and make it so it's fun for you to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and too many people, I mean, in the beginning, you do want to have one rhythm. How long can I keep this rhythm going?
Yes.
Especially if you haven't done things for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you've done that, in the same song, do a slight variation of that rhythm, and then another slight variation. And before you know it, the overall feel of the song, you can keep it going for a long time. But you can sit there and have some fun and really play off of what the other instruments, or if it's just a singer, you can start having a musical conversation with just playing with the rhythm.
Yes. Yeah. You make a good point with the strumming there. I think, the majority of strumming, and I know this is not just about strumming here today, but obviously strumming is really more percussive than anything. And yeah, 16ths and 8ths will cover most strumming situations. So if you can get that sort of motor going to either 4 to a beat or 2 to a beat, you can do anything really, as long as you it's more about the accenting and the feel than the exact rhythm that you're doing. So, learning strumming patterns is a great sort of starting point, but it can sound a little mechanical if you just play the same strumming pattern exactly every bar. It's, as you say, it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, and again, and if you're just starting out with rhythm, that's a great way to start. Is
Yes,
just
absolutely.
how consistent can I get something?
Mm-hmm.
And once the answer is I can play this really consistently, then you want to move away from that. Not that you're never going to use it again, but you just want to start adding more and more options. So
Yeah. Yes. Not just stop at learning that pattern and then, thinking that's the way you got to do it all the time.
yeah, especially if you're a person who likes learning songs, if you learn the exact strum, don't move on to the new song. Everyone's always looking for the new thing. I'm always looking at what's something else I can do within this song I'm working on.
Yes.
I mean, with the students I teach in person, I'm using a lot of the same songs over and over, just because there's so many things you can do with them,
Yeah.
and a lot of
Yes.
people don't look at things that way.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. So yes, I think we're all about practicing away from the guitar. So yeah, I think that's great. I mean, there's other things you can do beyond rhythm, but certainly rhythm is one that we can do. So what about number 4? What have we got for number 4 in terms of building and developing and improving our rhythm?
okay, well, rhythm as like a creative tool. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so now we're going to kind of do the exact opposite of what we just talked about. You have one rhythm, and you have to create at least 3 different things from it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It could even be as simple as, can I strum my chords? Can I play like 3 different inversions, or my same chords, 3 different spots on the neck, and keep the same rhythm? So I have my rhythm. I just have to make variations on that rhythm. And then if I have that down, can I maybe do an arpeggiated part? Or either, I know you do finger picking stuff. I tend to use my pick and do arpeggiated chord patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Say the rhythm has to stay the same, but can I make something from that?
Yep.
And then can I do a single note lead line using that exact same rhythm? And just how far can you take this idea of this one single rhythm, and how many different options can I get out of it before I completely run out of ideas?
Mm-hmm. So could you give us an example of that then? Could we maybe create a bar rhythm? I guess is no, you wouldn't want much longer than that at least at the beginning, right? But could you give us an example of a rhythm and maybe 3 ways to apply it?
Sure. Let's just take the most basic pop progression and the most used strum ever.
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
We're going to go G, D, E minor, C, go on. Okay, that's the common way. I played that with open chords. Not that you can see on my phone here.
Oh, hang on. Let me do it so that we can see. Oh no, we're not going to see so
That
much.
doesn't
That's
help.
fine. No problem. Yeah.
I got really small screen we're dealing with here today, so that's okay.
That's all right.
And then just take that and do it
Got
bar
it.
chord.
Uh-huh.
but I'm keeping the same rhythm going.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you know inversions, can I do that with, and you can either do it with one inversion or you can make it more complicated and do voice leading. If you know how to do voice leading, you've got like 3 options on that set of strings.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we're thinking arpeggiated, let's take that same idea. Okay. And if I'm thinking a lead line, I probably don't want to do the same rhythm. Like maybe I'll do it on the first chord and maybe the third chord
Mm-hmm.
and just play something different. Because doing that exact same rhythm for the entire lead line, I'm not sure about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But maybe.
Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Just something that's not really fancy. You know, you're not going to wow the other guitar players in the room. But a lot of times that's not what fits the song anyways.
Yes.
But we took that one rhythm and we created something off of that using those 3 ideas, at least that I use all the time.
Yep. That's really good because you really, as you say, exactly your point here is starting with rhythm, right? And so the rhythm's the central thing, and that's great. That's really good. So that would be typically how you might teach somebody early on with rhythm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, or very early on is step 1. Can I play
The rhythm.
Yeah, just the rhythm, however you're like, and it comes down to what do you like the music you like playing, what do you use? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if it's someone who likes more hard rock stuff, we can do that exact same thing with power chords and it's still going to
Yeah.
sound good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just choose whatever you're using in your style of music.
Yep.
And apply it to that first, and then just
Mm-hmm.
keep expanding and expanding your options that you have. And again, that's what allows you to improvise in the moment when you're playing with other people. Is the more you do this, I've got to keep that rhythm fairly steady, and now I have other options I can throw in there that give the song just a new flavor.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the way you applied that rhythm when you were single note line, you were saying not over every chord would, doesn't sound so good. I think also what you did there helps sort of train the person to have a beginning and an ending to their particular phrase, because we all know what guitarists are great at doing is just playing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we can breathe and play at the same time, so we can do that till our heart's content, but it doesn't sound great. So I think, if you played a rhythm and then let it breathe for a bar, as you did in your example, then repeat the rhythm to reinforce that rhythm in a different way to address the chord, and then let it rest. It's also, sort of setting you up to leave spaces between your phrases as far as soloing is concerned. So it's getting into sort of the realms of soloing and improvisation there, but sort of has a secondary benefit there, if you like.
Yeah, it becomes a conversation. It's not a run-on sentence.
Yes, exactly.
Guitar players are really good at playing really long paragraphs that just never end. Like, when's that period finally going to come in? It's going to be a while.
Got a lot to say. Okay, so writing, creating from rhythm. What about number 5? What have we got there?
Number 5 is, again, we can take just a single rhythm and just how can you transform it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's just say with the single chord this time, we'll do a G and we'll do like a 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yep.
Okay. When I mean transform that, I can shift it. Okay. So just shift everything by a beat is the easiest thing to do.
Uh-huh.
So you're coming up with variations. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and.
Mm-hmm.
And then the eighth notes now move to beat 1. Yep. Now the eighth notes move to beat 2. I've taken one rhythm and got quite a few variations on that.
Yeah, moving that forward a beat at a time.
Yeah, and you can, and any one of those within a song is probably going to sound good. So you have one of those variations available to you at any point. And one of them is probably your main idea you're playing off of, but there's always other things that you can bring in to add interest to what you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like shifting is one way, just adding root notes. That adds dynamics to me.
So do you mean In like strumming, like hitting the root note and strumming, or what do you mean by
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I
Okay.
put root notes in different spots within that? So to begin with, now the beat 1 is much smaller than it was when I strummed it.
Yes.
And I know everyone likes to think with these cool dynamic marking names, but I like to think big and small. I'm simple
Yeah.
that way. Okay.
Yep.
So I
Makes
like
sense.
small, big.
Yep.
And if you're just thinking that way and getting some of those different dynamics in there, it's going to add so much to your playing that way. And just adding root notes is one way of doing that, because root notes tend to be small in general, much
Yes.
smaller than a full chord strum.
Yep. And then
Um,
did you then say that you could move that root note to other beats? So you're not
oh,
always,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So could you give us a couple of examples of just
Yeah.
moving the
So let's
root
just
note?
keep that and we'll put it on beat 2 now.
Yep.
Subtle difference, but it works. Let's put it on beat 3. Okay. It's going to really stink on beat 4, but let's put it there anyways. Wasn't as bad as I thought. But.
Yeah, yeah. But for the purpose of the exercise, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, coming back to strumming again, the same rhythm done differently in terms of dynamics can sound very different. So sometimes people are looking for the pattern that's going to fit the song, when really it's not the pattern so much, it's how it's played in terms of dynamics and, as you say, big, small, etc. You know, targeting specific parts of the chord, root notes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, how hard you're hitting your chords, or just how hard you're strumming in general,
Yep.
is a big part of everybody's sound. You need
Mm-hmm.
that dynamic level going up and down, just not drastically, but just a little bit, and it adds so much interest to what you're playing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you don't want to have that beginner guitar player sound where you're just going, and you're hearing
Yeah.
every single string on every single strum.
Yes.
We don't want that.
No. We need the targeting of the strings, and then the light and shade also with the volume and the attack. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
And moving that example you had, where I think you began with the eighth notes on beat 3, then move to 4, then 1, then 2. I guess we could also then start. I'm not sure. Well, this would work, I'm sure. Starting on the off beat. So if you moved it half a beat forward,
You could. That's just harder for most people, but absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that could be a next sort of logical step.
Yep.
After doing it with a bunch of rhythms, if you're doing that okay, then you could move it in increments of half a beat as opposed to a beat.
Right. Then we just end up with syncopation, which,
Yes.
next level rhythm.
Yeah.
If you want to go crazy with your syncopation, you can move it on the 16th note scale too.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can, depends how much you enjoy this stuff. I really enjoy it, so I've done all that.
Mm-hmm.
But for a person just starting doing this, probably stay on the beat just to play with that. But then absolutely, we just talked about the next 2 steps after that.
Yep. Great. So that is what you mean by transforming the rhythm. Yep.
Yep. And you can also, muted notes is another, huge one. To me, that's, we add that percussive. We become part of the drum set at that point.
Yes.
Okay. Super common one is just on 2 and 4, because that's where the snare drum's hitting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with muted notes, it's easier with bar chords than it is with open chords.
Yep.
With bar chords, you can do with one hand. With open string chords, you have to really incorporate the side of your palm over here.
Yes.
Where you're almost hitting the palm simultaneously, just a hair before the pick.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
anyone can do it, but just getting like a. So many songs just use that with that mute on 2 and 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just hearing that muted note adds interest again.
Yeah.
It's no longer a standard strum, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's got more of a groove to it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
With the percussive hits on 2 and 4, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah, that is our snare drum.
Yeah. Yes.
We just got rid of our drummer.
Exactly. More money.
Right.
And less hassle. Less musicians, easier, smoother. But yeah, great. Okay. So number 6, what have we got for another way to attack our rhythm when practicing?
Okay, we sort of talked about this a little bit with having different ways of approaching it, but use rhythm as a conversation. Okay, so we did that whole thing where so to me, this is the question. It's a really simple answer, but here's my answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So similar question and a similar answer. But if you start thinking with rhythm as a conversation, the first thing you play is your question. Now, how rhythmically can you answer that? It's another way to put periods in what you're playing.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not our typical guitar run-on sentence where we know our scales and we can play up and down them really fast, and we're never going to stop us from doing that.
Yep.
Thinking this way stops you from doing that and makes what you're playing much more musical.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, just the rhythm version of call and response that, is taught particularly in blues and so forth, but it's thinking of it from the rhythm perspective more than the melodic one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever rhythm you played, because what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to, every other one, I'm going to play the same rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's like living with a toddler, but where you get the same question over and over again, like all day long. And you've got to come up with a different way of answering it.
Yes.
Okay. But you just want that question and just take it for as long as you can. A lot of this stuff is go way more in depth than you think you can. Because if you do this for only 30 seconds, you're not going to get the biggest benefit out of it. Whereas if you set a timer and you make yourself do something like this for 5 minutes, you're going to be really struggling for ideas, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, half of it's already filled in. You already know the question. It's the answer that you're going to be struggling with.
Yes.
I already answered it that way. What else can I do? And that's a good spot to be, because that's it just forces you to be more creative, either with note choices or with the rhythm and how you're going to answer that.
So would you just do this purely rhythmically, clapping or tapping or something like that? Or
you could do that, yeah, if you're practicing away. I kind of combine both, just playing it, but I'm really thinking from a rhythmic standpoint. But yeah, if you're practicing away from your guitar, absolutely. If our rhythm is da 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 da, how are we answering that?
Yes, right. Then we're going to come up with something in the very next bar.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with music in general too, like, don't be afraid to sing no matter how badly it is. So, I mean, rhythmically, was that the greatest voice you ever heard in your life? No, absolutely not. But da 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 da, there's my phrase.
Yep.
And then I have to answer that somehow. And I'm not concerned about pitch at all at this point in time. I'm thinking completely rhythm as far as how I'm going to answer that.
Yep. Yes, that's a good point. And yeah, certainly your voice, for sure. My voice will not be anything. It'll be horrible, but yeah, as you say, it's certainly not. It's got nothing to do with quality of pitch. It's just making a sound to, create a rhythm.
Yeah, well, it goes all the way back to our first point, or maybe it's our second point, of if you can count it, or if you can say something and you do it consistently, it's so much easier to transfer it to the instrument.
Yeah.
Because you have to be the one creating the time. It's not just something that you listen to and eventually latch on to. It comes from inside.
Yes.
So, and I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that with students at times, it's like, they'll go to play something and they just start playing. There's no sort of setting within themselves of, okay, let me create the tempo, the groove here, and then I'll start to play my thing. I mean, it's why when you look, you see bands play, or you're playing in a band yourself, everyone just doesn't start randomly at the same time without any sort of cue as to the tempo. Could be the singer giving the tempo, the drummer, whoever's. Generally, someone might have the tempo for the song, and there's just sometimes it's subtle, but it is a count in, and then everyone can start at the same time, and everyone can start not only at the same time, but at the same tempo.
Yes. And
so
for beginners too, for some reason, I often find that they'll count it once, and they'll actually play it really good once. And then they're like, okay, I'm done counting.
Yeah.
And then it completely falls apart. and they don't have it enough to really know that it's falling apart on them. So when you're counting like this, make sure you can do it consistently. Especially in your practice time, you're counting a lot.
Yes.
Until you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, anytime I'm working something out, maybe I'm working something out by ear, I will tap my foot, and where I need to, I will count, and I will count often, just to, particularly if I'm trying to work something out that's challenging, I rely on being able to count and, see where that phrase is starting. It might be on, the wherever it might be within the beat. But yeah, certainly tapping, counting, and once you've got it, then it just slots in there, and you don't have to think about it so much. But yeah, certainly it's got to start with the count.
Yeah, and if it's a super advanced rhythm, there's some rhythms where I've literally walked around the house just counting it for like a week
Yeah.
before I honestly bring it to the guitar, because I know I don't have the groove yet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I want to be able to say it before I know that now before I bring it to the guitar. It's going to be a struggle if I don't have that rhythm down.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So great question, answer, call, response with rhythm. And then what about number 7 for improving our rhythm? What have we got there?
Practice rests.
Being quiet.
Yeah. Rests means silence. So many times I'll go see bands perform and there's supposed to be a tight stop, and someone's got this going on right through the stop. It's like, oh, you just ruined the whole thing. You don't even know it. Or even, I like harder rock music too. So like a band like AC/DC, to me, they're the masters of playing rests.
Oh yeah.
They're just so tight rhythmically.
Yes.
And they're putting those spaces in there, and it just makes everything sound so good and so powerful in what they're doing. So you want to get really good at controlling your guitar.
Mm-hmm.
The second I played that note, I wanted it a rest there, so I made sure there was nothing ringing.
Yep.
And that's just super important when it comes to rhythm.
Mm-hmm. So what are some ways we could practice that? I mean, I guess it's a technique thing in being able to mute out your strum or whatever you're doing. Are there ways you can kind of practice this away from the guitar or other approaches?
Away from the guitar, I'm not sure about that one, other than just be thinking that rests are important.
Yeah.
Okay. Because just remind yourself that sometimes silence is the absolute best thing that can happen in the song at this moment in time.
Yes.
But with the guitar, it's almost, well, it's the same as hitting the muted strings. It's only we're choosing not to hit anything there. So if I'm playing a bar chord, let me see if I can get there. So all I'm doing is I'm lifting my fingers slightly. They're still touching. So I'm getting that muted sound. I'm getting a little harmonic in there. That's annoying me a little bit. So this over here, you want kind of the same. So this is happening and that's happening at the same time.
Yes.
There we go.
Yep.
There's 3 good ones in a row. So first one is bad.
Absolute silence after the strum.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we could do that same thing with that strum we were doing earlier, the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. On beat 2.
Yep.
Okay. How about beat 4?
Yeah.
I mean, with this type of practice, when you're first starting to do it, doesn't matter if it's the best sounding thing ever. That's why it's practice.
Yes.
It's not meant for other people to hear when we're practicing.
Yes.
So I don't have to ever perform that live. It's just, can I do it, is what you want to be asking yourself.
Yeah. Okay. And just on what about your thoughts, Brian, on like metronome? Obviously it's a tool, device used or designed to help us keep time, but in my experience again with teaching, students just don't want to go near the metronome, or after having a bit of a go at it, just sort of discard it because they go out of time with the metronome. So do you have particular ways you get students to practice with the metronome, or strategies to do with that?
Yeah, for me, metronome is like step 3. Okay. So step 1 is, can I count it?
Yep.
First, okay. Step 2 is start playing what you're counting. And to me, the metronome's a test. It's testing how close am I to creating the time I want to be creating. And the metronome's going to let you know right away. Yeah. Do I have this right or do I have this wrong? The metronome's just there to give you feedback as far as how close you got that on your own, being able to play that rhythm.
Yeah. So be able to count it, play it, count it, then it's ready to go with the metronome and, as you say, test to see if you can keep it in time. And, not just once through, but perhaps for a minute, 2 minutes at a go.
Yes.
And I always,
Consistency is what we're after.
yeah. And I mean, it depends on the tempo, of course, but, 60, you might think, oh, that's easier than 80. It's often harder, right? Because it's slower and it's easier to race and harder to keep right on the click when it's at 60. I find 80 tends to be not too fast, but not too slow. It's a little bit more of a, depending on what you're doing. But if you just strumming a chord or even just tapping a rhythm, then it's a pretty sort of good tempo to start with.
Yeah, like 80 to 105, that little area right in there tends to be
Yeah.
like a comfort zone for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You go a little bit faster than that,
Yeah.
there's a chance people are starting to fall behind. You go slower than that, people are starting to rush a little bit. So
Yeah.
you want to practice the entire range eventually. But yeah,
Yes.
starting right around 80 for
80
most
to
rhythms.
80 to 105 or something like that within
I
that
mean,
range.
yeah, right around in that range is a great place to start.
Yes. And we've got a question here, which I'll put up on the screen. Here's it going to come up. So metronome, which one is a good choice to buy? So do you have it? I mean, these days it's apps, right? I mean, it's too easy to have the app
Yeah,
on your
my phone,
phone.
I've got one called Pro Metronome.
Pro Metronome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got one called, I'm just having a look now. I mean, they're all much of a muchness, but I got one called Tempo. I think I know the one. Actually, I might have that one too, the one you've got. I always sort of suggest that, um, you know, there's always the free version, and that's good to get started with. But there's more variables you can play with if you are willing to, forego $4 or whatever it is for the pro version of the app, because it will allow you to subdivide the beat more and do a few more little things, things around.
Yeah,
Just
you can have whole measures drop out and things like that.
yeah,
So there's
beats
all
drop
kinds of
out.
cool.
Yeah, little training things and all that sort of stuff. So yes, so I would suggest that. Or we've got someone here just saying Korg, the old Korg metronome, which would be, I can picture that, I think, little,
Is that the
actual.
little blue one that everyone owned for a while?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they can double as tuners, or tuner can double as a metronome. But yeah, anything like that, I think is fine. And when playing with the metronome, I always encourage people to, as we were just saying before, to not just do it for 10 seconds, but to keep that rhythm you're working with to the metronome, to go for, I mean, if you're playing a song, the average song's probably about 3.5 minutes. You've got to keep time for that whole time duration. So if you're playing along to a metronome and you start to go out of time, try and bring it back in rather than just stop and start again. So, if you can hear yourself going out of time, that's good. See if you can kind of continue and just tighten it up as you're going, because you might need to do that in real life playing situations, because you go out of time, or maybe someone else sort of throws you off because they're out of time. It can be any sort of, circumstance there. And there was one other thing that came to mind, and it's just totally slipped my mind now. But
Yeah, as far as continuing to play a thing, you can always simplify your part too.
yes, yeah, absolutely. There's
I
another
mean, you can go
question.
down to playing whole notes if you need to.
Yeah,
So
yes, exactly.
just
And just
get on,
keeping,
find beat one. You
yes,
need beat one.
yes. There's a question here. I'm willing to spend money. I'm asking for my 7 and 8-year-old boys who I'm teaching. They aren't allowed to play computer games yet. Cool. Yes. Well, yeah, I would say, as we said, yeah, the apps are okay. If you're not video games, not on a phone, got it. So actually physical metronome. The Korg ones, I'm sure they still sell, but anyone really is going to be fine. Yeah. They're all much of a muchness.
Yeah, just really kind of make sure it's a digital one, because I know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even sure these are made anymore. I'm thinking back to when I first bought
Yeah.
mine, but they had the dials and there were some skips where you couldn't quite
Yeah. I can.
get
Yeah.
every single tempo. Just make sure
Yeah.
you can get any tempo you want.
Yeah. Little pocket-sized digital
Yeah,
metronome.
a digital one will be fine.
Yeah. And the other thing, that's what I was going to say, came to mind. I find sometimes students with a metronome, be it, digital or on the phone, will look at the metronome trying to keep time, which is not a good thing to do. You want to really look away and just hear the click and keep time with the click, because if we're looking, we perceive things at a different rate at what we hear them, and it's not actually really going to help that much. Plus, you don't have something to look at so much when you are playing in real life. So you really want to have the click, hear it, but don't be sort of fixated on it, trying to keep time by looking at the dot and trying to match your strum or whatever you're doing with the actual, visual representation of the beat.
Yeah, in fact, if you're getting on a time, sometimes it's better just to close your eyes because you take away that one sense.
Yeah,
and
yes.
Magically your ability to hear it improves.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Well, anything else to add here, Brian? Any last thoughts or anything that comes to mind that we haven't covered here? I mean, that's great. Really, really valuable information that we've got. Anything else before we wrap things up here?
no, we've really covered a lot. The big thing is just focus on rhythm. I mean, it's going to make everything you do sound better.
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, it's rhythm, and then right below that is just fretboard knowledge, and
yes,
those are the two main things I'm always working on. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know where you stand on this, but I would say rhythm is more important than the melody. Would you agree or not agree? Or do you think
at times, yes, because if you have an interesting rhythm, you can get away with playing like one note.
Yeah.
And have it benefit the song. And to me, that's really not that great of a melody.
Yes.
So I would absolutely agree that, because I mean, even if it's the best melody in the world, if it's sung out of time,
it's not.
It's awful.
Well, there's no time. It's just it's absolutely. That's why I would push rhythm ahead of melody. Obviously, they're all important, but I think the rhythm is certainly up there overall, whatever instrument you're playing. So that's great, Brian. Really, really great ideas to work on rhythm, and really, I mean, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day on rhythm, done consistently, will see some results, pretty immediate in your playing, I would think, or certainly in the shorter term, and then obviously getting better in the mid to long term.
Absolutely. Yeah. And always work right on the edge of what you're able to do too. Like if you have some rhythms down, don't just keep practicing that every day.
Change it up, make it
change it up. Always be working right on the edge of your abilities, and you'll progress that way. Because a lot of people fall into the habit too of confusing practice with entertainment, I think. So.
And I and I think if you slot into one, sometimes people can be a little one-dimensional with their rhythm. It can be the same sort of rhythm over and over, and they're maybe improvising or whatever and thinking they're playing the wrong notes or they need a new scale or something, when really it's, and that could help, but it's the rhythm application and broadening that that is going to help more, perhaps.
Way more. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, on this topic, Brian, I do believe you have something here that people can grab today, absolutely free, that's going to help on our topic of rhythm here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's 6 easy steps to learn and master any rhythm. At least that's what I remember from the super long title I gave it. And what it is it's just a step-by-step process. We already talked about a few of them, of being able to count, then taking to the guitar. There's the 6 steps that if you follow them, you will be able to master any rhythm. And I take you through the process. It's a video. It's a short little video course, and it's free. And you can go to the link you see on the screen there, or I'm sure it's going to be in the chat, and just get it, and you'll know exactly how to start practicing your rhythm to really see some improvement and make your playing sound so much better.
Awesome. And yes, I have put the link in the chat there for people to have a clickable link to check that out. And I also have something here that I will quickly bring up for anyone interested in fingerpicking. We're not talking about fingerpicking today, but of course, whatever you do on guitar or any instrument is going to involve rhythm. So we're talking about fingerpicking here. So if you're into fingerpicking, or you would like to have a little introduction into fingerpicking, this is an ebook that also has videos for all the examples, so you can see and hear and see what I'm doing. And the basic concept of this book is very, very simple fingerpicking patterns that really, if you've got basic skills on the guitar, you can do. And it's more about how we apply them in the fretting hand. So my the 10 progressions, the 10 patterns and progressions in this book, pretty much for the most part, if not entirely, avoid open chords and bar chords. We use different things to enhance the sound of the pattern, and often things that are as easy to do as an open chord or a bar chord. And I can understand they can be challenging in themselves, depending where you're at, but we're not talking about super hard things. We're just talking about things that sound really cool, sophisticated, but are quite simple to play. Lots of open strings and things like that. So it's 10 patterns applied to 10 progressions, one introduced at a time, then applied, then on to the next one, with audio and video to support that, so you can see what is going on there. So I'll put the link in the chat now, so you can check out that if you would like to. Now, let me get rid of that so we come back here. I think there might have been, I just want to check in the chat before we finish up here. Oh yeah, it's just like what we said here, I think before, Brian, or you mentioned briefly about taking one of the beats out and keeping your time is very, with a metronome. So certainly a next sort of step, but it becomes a lot more challenging if you have a metronome going at a certain tempo, let's say quarter notes on the beat, and then you take one of those beats out, as in the beat's still there, but there's no click on that beat. So you've still got to hit on 2 if you take the second beat out, the click, hit on 2 and then come in on 3 and be in time. When you don't have the click there on the beat, it makes it a lot harder, and you could take out, you know, several beats at a time, or just leave the click on the first beat and have to click that clap or tap the other 3 and hopefully be on the 1 of the next bar. That's incredibly hard to do, actually. It's quite challenging, but really, really great training. And I'm sure you've done some of that sort of stuff before.
Oh yeah, and you can keep, I mean, if you practice that stuff enough, you're going to get good at it. So just keep making the gap bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
You can make the gap 2 measures.
Yeah,
and that's good luck with that one.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing is that, I mean, if you hold a metronome up to, you know, to the tempo of a song, particularly, let's say, you know, certainly 70s, 80s, 90s, it's probably, the song is probably, depending on how it's recorded, but can vary a little bit around that tempo. It's not necessarily, we're not computers. We're not going to be computers when we play, and that's sort of where the feel comes from. But you can't just disregard training the timing first to then be able to stretch it to create the feel. We don't want to go at it and just go, well, I don't need the metronome, I don't need to feel the time, I'm just going to make it up and be creative. We need that as the reference, but then we can push, pull, whatever, and you know, that's sort of the injection of the feel into it. So all really important stuff to do. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad the power's lasted, and I hope that it stays on for you. And thank you so much for stopping by and giving us some of your very great expertise on rhythm.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you so much, everybody who has attended today, for the questions, for chiming in, for letting us know where you're from. I hope you are all well and you have a great day ahead or a great night ahead, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next Acoustic Guitar Talk live stream. And we'll see you soon. Bye for now. Cheers.